Now we're going to try a new segment that we're going to call it Agree to Disagree, where we're going to pose a question at the end of episodes, just a debate question, just about the topic at hand, and just talk about it for a couple minutes. So Ryan's got a question for me today. I'll pick a side. What's your question?
Well, I sort of stole this from the Escape Pod podcast. Shout out to you guys. It's sort of a basic one. We're going to start with a basic one for the first one because it's just kind of fun that way. Who do you think has a brighter future, Marvel or DC? Now, Marvel, let me put out all the points here. Marvel, again, after Loki Season 2, has a bit of a brighter future, but there's also the Jonathan Majors situation. The Marvels is doing decently well, but it's got the lowest box office out of any Marvel movie, I think I've heard, the opening weekend. But that doesn't really matter. Just word of mouth will spread and all that. There's also X-Men coming out, Deadpool's coming out, but DC has this whole lineup of the new stuff coming out, Superman Legacy, but hey, if that fails, what will happen to that franchise? So what's your opinion on that?
DC has the brighter future.
Yeah, I agree.
But you have to agree to disagree.
Oh, no.
You have to argue Marvel now. DC has the brighter future because let's go back 80 years. Or even 20 years. That's better. Let's go back 20 years ago. When you think of Marvel and DC, what do you think of? DC, you got Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, the Justice League of America. They're household names that multiple generations have grown up with. Some of these characters are 80 years old, still going strong. They are the most popular superheroes on the planet still, despite the damage the brand has taken in movie form. They're still the most popular brand for the individual characters. Yeah, Marvel's got Spider-Man, X-Men, Fantastic Four, and in the last 10 years, they've elevated characters like Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor to A-list status, but they don't have those characters anymore, unless they reboot, which I know a lot of people will be upset with. Spider-Man, I think, can survive because we've proven Spider-Man, Batman, and Superman. They all are characters with longevity. People will always go see a new Spider-Man movie, even if it's rebooted. But I think the MCU as a brand is tainted to the point where it's lost mainstream appeal. And I don't know if they're ever going to fully recover. I think it'll always be around in a niche way. But I think DC is taking the right strategy going forward. They're capitalizing more on individual movies led by interesting filmmakers with a unique vision then that also happen to tie into a universe as opposed to creating a shared universe to be a shared universe. And I think that's what DC has always done as a brand better. Batman can always just exist in Gotham City. You don't need Batman to be part of a wider universe, but he can also work in that too. Same thing with Superman, The Flash, Wonder Woman. Like all their characters have their own little worlds that they've always been really good at. You can just do that, or you can be a part of the world too. Marvel traditionally has always needed that interconnectedness, and it's been a strength. And lately, it's starting to become a detriment to them. But that's just kind of what Marvel is at its core, and I don't think they can ever really pivot away from that. So DC will always be relevant just because it can keep reinventing itself just based on what it is. It can always have movies that will stand alone better than Marvel's. And Marvel's brand is just wearing thin.
Yeah, I agree with you on the most part. If I'm going to play the more devil advocate on this side, because that's what this segment's all about, is that Marvel's got like Disney money. So I feel like they'll still last for a long period of time. And since this is more about like a film podcast, if DC, like if Superman Legacy fails, like fails bad, fails more than Man of Steel did in terms of audience reception of it, because say what we will about Man of Steel, it was a well-made movie. I still think it's great, and a good chunk of the audience that watched it loved it. But Superman Legacy falls flat and is like a box office bomb. How much of like fans will come back to see the rest of that universe, you know? It's the same thing with I think the Flash a bomb? I don't think it was a bomb, was it? I can't remember.
It was a bomb.
Yeah, it was a bomb. And so it was supposed to be, well, it was not really supposed to be now, but it was kind of hyped up to be the reset of the universe. And it didn't really do that. So there's not that much hype going into the new universe for James Gunn's DC timeline. I still think there's still a lot there that is to be excited about, regardless if Superman Legacy fails or not. And he is taking his time with it. It's not supposed to come out until 2025. I mean, but if it does fall flat, what will drive people to go see this specific timeline of this lineup? That's my only thing, because look what happened with like the Universal, like the Dark Universe they tried to do in 2017, right? They released The Mummy, that bombed because it was a trash movie, and then they didn't make any others. They probably will bring those monster movies back to life, because that was the first like cinematic universe for Hollywood back in early 30s to whenever it was. But with this branch of timeline, it's just they have to almost nail Superman Legacy, I think, for a mass audience to really care about this universe of the Justice League, because we haven't seen a well done live action Justice League in a while besides Snyder Cut, but that wasn't really mass released.
I'll counterpoint you there and say that DC, I think Marvel has the advantage in the short term, just because their brand is still more established. DC has to get a footing again, but I do think DC wins long term, just because of, like I said, who their characters are. They've proven they can successfully reboot. Once Marvel finally runs dry, then they're the ones doing the reboot, starting from scratch, basically, and have to build up again. But by that point, DC will have probably gotten something good going. And DC's also got these weird fail-safes, right, is the funny thing. Because even if the DC universe fails, we still have a standalone Joker movie. We still and that universe with Joaquin Phoenix. We still have the Matt Reeves Batman movies that are tangential. Like, DC has already established itself as a brand that can do stuff as not part of the larger brand and still be successful. Yeah. Whereas Marvel, everything has to count and be a part of it. They can't do anything experimental. So I think DC, just by design here, has the advantage long term, but Marvel's still on top right now.
I agree. I agree on the long term thing. However, a small counterpoint, I don't know how much of that long term they'll be successful at if they stick with Warner Brothers, personally. Because if they are afraid something's not going to do well, they'll scrap it for a tax write-off. They did that with Batgirl, and then I think they did that with a recent movie as well. Oh, they did that for, they shot a movie with John Cena. Oh, they just talked about this at work. I can't remember what it was. But it was supposed to be like, it was like I can't remember what it was, but it had something with John Cena in it. Well, you couldn't see him in it anyway. But they just scrapped that, like another $20 million tax write-off. So I'm afraid the studio heads at that studio just won't allow them to be experimental. But you could say the same thing with Disney and Marvel at the same time, because they didn't really let the sequels for Star Wars be experimental, or they haven't really let Phase 4 be experimental either. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that seems like a decent place to wrap up. We don't want these debates to turn into whole episodes, but there's a little taste for you. And whether you like or dislike this, too bad. We're going to be on the next episode for sure.
Yep. And if you guys have questions that we could, use for this segment, please feel free to leave it down in the comments below, or, send a message on Patreon or whatever. It'd be a fun little segment to have at the end of each podcast.
Yeah, we'll try to keep them more contained. Maybe get a structure to them. We'll see. Just to keep it a little light. Anyway, that's Loki Season 2 review and a little debate for you. Plug your socials and let's wrap her up.